In the 1980s, a quiet suburban family claimed that they were being hunted inside their own home in Pennsylvania. At first, it was just a bunch of little things like weird smells, flickering lights, and shadows moving where no one was supposed to be. But then, something far darker finally revealed itself. One family member woke up in the middle of the night, pinned to the bed by something that they couldn't see. And some very unthinkable things were being done to them. This case would go on to terrify an entire community, end up bringing Ed and Lorraine Warren themselves in, and inspire the movie The Conjuring, The Last Rites. But it was all real and based on an entirely true story. Or was it just another very elaborate hoax that made American history? This is the true story of the Smurl Family Haunting. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Sian and I make videos like this all the time. If you're into anything creepy, disturbing, or horror, then you're in the right place and you should definitely click subscribe. Let's get into it. So to really understand what exactly happened, we have to take it back to when Jack and Janet Smurl moved into what they thought would be their absolute dream home. It was a very modest duplex in Pittston, Pennsylvania. Definitely the kind of home where people build their lives, have kids, and just live quietly amongst a lovely community. Jack worked as a salesman and Janet stayed home to look after their 4 daughters. By all accounts, they were a very ordinary working class American family. Nothing strange there. Neighbors described them as very kind, church-going people who mostly just kept to themselves. But what made this home a little bit different was that it wasn't entirely new to them. Before moving in, the Smurls had actually lived in Jack's parents' half of the very same duplex. It was very familiar and comfortable, and they just saw it as a fresh start for their whole family. And at first, life there was exactly what they had pictured all these years and exactly what they had hoped for. Birthday parties, backyard barbecues, laughter in the hallways, the perfect picture of suburban life. And for a while, everything seemed completely fine. But inside those walls, small cracks were beginning to show. And this was things that the Smurls just could not explain. And things seemed pretty harmless at first, but this would soon escalate into one of the darkest and most disturbing hauntings in American history. The first signs were quite easy to dismiss, like a strange stain that appeared on the wall. They just rubbed it away, scrubbed it off, but then it just reappeared. The television would switch channels on its own, and lights flickered even when the wiring had been disconnected. And then came all of the sounds. Low, heavy thuds echoing through all of the walls in the house at night. And at first, Jack just thought it was problems with the plumbing. But these noises grew louder and louder. There were lots of dragging sounds, footsteps in empty rooms, and at times, what sounded like someone pounding from inside the walls themselves. Janet even began to notice some terrible smells, like rotting flesh, that would appear very suddenly and out of nowhere, and vanish just as quickly as it arrived. No one knew its source. And soon, these disturbances weren't confined to the background anymore. Furniture started moving on its own, drawers began slamming shut, and one of the daughters swore that she saw a shadow move across her bedroom, even though the lights were on and no one was home. And for a while, they would, like any family who maybe thought that they were being haunted, they tried to just explain it away and think of logical reasons as to why this was not something paranormal. Faulty wiring, stress, just children's vivid imaginations, you name it, they probably thought of it. But each incident kept stacking onto the next, creating a really uncomfortable pattern for them that they just could not ignore any further. Something inside that house seemed to be watching them, and it was only just getting started. By the mid-1980s, the disturbances inside the Smurl house had become completely impossible to ignore. Whatever was in that house wasn't just trying to scare them anymore, it was trying to hurt them. Jack claimed that he was scratched and bitten by something that he could not see. At night, he'd even wake up with the sound of guttural growls right beside his bed, even though no one was there. Janet even described being thrown across the room by a completely invisible force. And on more than one occasion, she claimed that she was being pinned to the bed, completely unable to move by something that was sitting on top of her, holding her down. And unfortunately, the children were not spared either. They reported voices whispering their names from dark corners of the home, and one of the daughters even said that she saw a dark figure hovering at the foot of her bed in the middle of the night. And then came the most disturbing claim of all. Jack told reporters that he was sexually assaulted by an entity. This is a detail that of course completely horrified the public and even made paranormal believers sit back in their seats and just feel very uncomfortable. But after this, I get it. This family was desperate. They went from living in this completely ordinary little house in a duplex to feeling like prisoners in their own home. And as this activity escalated, they realized that they could not fight this thing alone, whatever this thing was. By 1986, the Smurls were just over it. Every prayer, every attempt to bless the house, every effort to cleanse the house, to try to ignore what's happening, just completely failed. And when they had reached absolute breaking point, that is when they reached out to Ed and Lorraine Warren themselves to ask for help. And you of course know Ed and Lorraine Warren, the most famous demonologists in American history, the people in all of the Conjuring movies. So at this point in their lives, they had already gained some notoriety for the case that happened in Amityville, and of course their reputation preceded them. When they arrived at the Smurl home, Lorraine, who is a self-proclaimed clairvoyant, said that she immediately sensed something very dark and something non-human. Ed would actually later tell reporters that this house was not being haunted by a single ghost, but a demonic entity. He described this demonic entity as intelligent, powerful, and very intent on destroying the family from the inside out. The Warrens performed multiple blessings on the house and even attempted exorcisms. And for short stretches between all of these, the activity did seem to calm down slightly, but inevitably it would just return. Louder, more violent, and more personal than before. The Warrens' involvement, of course, drew national attention. Some saw them as saviors, offering the family some hope, and others, of course, accused them of exploiting tragedy for fame. But one thing was certain: the Smurl haunting had just entered the public spotlight, and the story was about to explode way farther than their small little neighborhood that they had been living in. Once the Warrens were involved, it didn't take very long for the Smurl haunting to explode into the headlines. Local reporters swarmed the very quiet street in West Pittston, eager to get a glimpse of the so-called House of Terror. Neighbors began whispering about what they had seen in the windows at night, flashes of light, screams in the middle of the night, and even figures moving through the house when they had claimed the family were away. Some swore that the Smurls were telling the truth. Others believed that it was nothing but hysteria and just vivid imagination. Priests were also called in by the family and by the Warrens, some of them performing blessings, others just outright exorcisms, but even they admitted that the results were just temporary at best. By late 1986, the story had gone national. Newspapers across America ran all these features about the Smurl demon, and TV stations aired interviews with the very shaken family. For the Smurls, it meant more attention than they ever intended or wanted, but for the skeptics, all of this publicity raised new questions. Was the family actually being tormented by the supernatural, or were they just staging all of this for the cameras? With this story plastered across newspapers and TV, not everyone was convinced that the Smurl family was living through a nightmare. In fact, the louder the haunting became, the louder the criticism grew. Psychologists even started suggesting that the Smurl family was experiencing stress-induced hallucinations, which is just a product of anxiety from financial strain, or even just a shared delusion across the whole family. Neighbors even pointed out that most of the activity was only ever witnessed by the Smurl themselves, so it couldn't be proven. Some journalists accused the Warrens of pushing the case just too far, using it to build their own reputation as America's beloved paranormal experts. One local reporter flatly called it a publicity stunt, while others labeled the whole affair a complete hoax. Even within the church, there was major division. While a few priests acknowledged something very dark in the home, others just said that there was nothing happening at all, nothing paranormal present. For the Smurls, of course, the skepticism only deepened their isolation. To them, the bruises, the screams, the stench, the rot, the shadows in the hallway, all of it was completely real. But to outsiders, it had looked like a family that had just gotten trapped in a story that just completely spiraled out of control. By the late 1980s, the Smurls had reached their breaking point yet again. After more than a decade of complete torment by this entity, they had decided that it's time to move out. And I'm also asking the question, why did they not move sooner? Don't know. But they moved into a new place, hoping that the distance between them and their old house would finally give them some peace. And for a time, it did actually quieten down. But according to the family, unfortunately, this dark presence did follow them. Both Jack and Janet insisted that even in their new home, all of these strange things kept showing up again, like the smells, the noises, and the shadows. In 1986, their story was also actually turned into a book called The Haunted, which is written with the help of author Robert Curran. The book painted their ordeal in very harrowing detail, from the first scratches on the walls to the violent attacks that drove them out of the house. It quickly became a bestseller amongst the fans of the paranormal, but it also fueled even more debates around the Smurl family. To skeptics, the book was just nothing more than sensationalism, a story that was purely exaggerated for profit. But for the Smurls, it was of course their testimony, a permanent record of a nightmare they claimed had nearly destroyed their entire family. Decades later, the Smurl Family Haunting remains one of the most infamous and controversial cases in America. To believers, it's proof that families can be tormented by forces completely beyond comprehension, and to skeptics, it's a cautionary tale of hysteria, stress, and the power of suggestion. Ed and Lorraine Warren stood by the Smurls the entire way through, completely convinced that they had a demonic entity in their house, but critics insist that the truth was just far less supernatural. And this haunting has now slipped into the hands of Hollywood, and we will see it in The Conjuring, The Last Rites. So I want to know what you think. Before you watch the movie, do you think that this was a real haunting? Do you think that it was a hoax? I mean, these people probably saw Ed and Lorraine Warren's fame from all of the previous cases that they had investigated. Were they just looking to take advantage of their fame and perhaps, make an extra buck because they knew Ed and Lorraine Warren would come help them? Or do you think they were just truly, truly desperate to get rid of this entity in their house? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. But apart from that, I am very excited to see the movie. Please let me know if you're also going to go see it. I love the Conjuring universe. Nothing has ever quite terrified me like all of the Conjuring movies, especially Annabelle 2. So I am excited for the very last scare in the Conjuring universe. Very sad that it's ending. And if you enjoyed this kind of video, please don't forget to subscribe. And if you liked this very video, please don't forget to hit like. I would really appreciate it. It really helps my channel. And thank you for staying this far if you have made it this far. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.